All right, everybody, welcome back. I don't typically do a follow-up video this soon after my unboxing and review, but the watch is so popular and that video did so well for the channel. It's by far the highest performing video I've ever uploaded, so thank you for that. Thank you for tuning in and watching and liking and subscribing. Now that I've lived with the watch for 6 days, almost exactly a week, I feel like I can better explain some of the thoughts that I had and communicated in the first video. Confirm some things that I still really like about the watch and also some things I might want to improve. So I have 10 thoughts overall. The first being that I love the way the watch wears. So number one, the watch wears so much better than I expected. I really like the way it looks on me when I check the watch in the mirror, how it wears on my wrist when I'm just checking the time. The overall aesthetics and the contrast of the dial against the bezel and everything. I ordered the watch originally not really liking it. I didn't really like the look or the design of the watch, but I am a big dive watch guy, and I really like Jody at Just One More Watch. So I was like, you know what? I'll order it. I'll support him. If it isn't my taste, I will just sell it. I figured it'd be easy enough to sell. It is a super popular watch, clearly. But I'm going to keep the watch. I really like the way the watch looks and wears on me, and I was surprised by that. So even though there are a few things that maybe could change, I really like the watch. And I had no problem putting on every day for the last 6 days. Of the vast assortment of watches in my collection, I was happy to put this watch on every day for the last week. The next point on number one is this is not an Ali brand, right? So some things that came up with the comments last week when I uploaded that video are that this is just another Chinese watch, another Chinese dive watch. I really couldn't disagree more with that. This is not just some San Martin that they put the Erebus logo on. This is clearly a watch that was designed by Jody and Steven to be their watch. This is not just another Chinese dive watch. Is it made in China? Yes. But there are a lot of things that are made in China. There are a lot of name brands that are made in China. And I really don't understand that argument as a slight to the watch. I think the fit and finish of this watch is better than a lot of other watches I paid way more money for. Seiko. The bezel alignment is excellent. The looks are excellent. The comfort, everything about the watch does not scream AliExpress to me. There's nothing about this watch that seems like a cheap Chinese watch. So I wanted to get that out of the way. That was a comment that came up a couple times. I disagree. I could not disagree more. I really like this watch. Moving on to number two, I kind of already touched on this, but the legibility of the watch is excellent. This is a very easy watch to read the time on. Part of that could be because I chose the white dial. So the contrast of these bold hands against the white face might make it a little bit easier to read the time. It would be even easier if we had numbers instead of Lume indexes, but that's totally just a design preference thing. But overall, I'd say the legibility is really good on this watch, and I'm really happy about that. Number three is the Lume, which I gushed about in the last video, but I will continue to. The Lume is excellent in dim conditions, and in dark conditions, it is very bright. The only watch brand that I have that I think is better than this watch in terms of Lume would be Omega. Peter Blake Sword Hands Omegas have really excellent Lume. My Railmaster also has very excellent Lume. So those are the only ones that I would say have better Lume than this. Otherwise, I'd say this is probably the best lumed watch in the collection. Moving on to number four, the crystal. So the crystal is excellent. And I didn't really touch on it all that much in my last video, but the AR coating is so good. This flat sapphire crystal definitely helps, but you almost don't see the crystal half the time you're looking at the watch. It is really excellent AR coating and a really nice flat crystal. Some people were complaining that it is flat and not a domed crystal, but that is completely an aesthetic thing. Not every dive watch has to have a domed sapphire crystal. It's almost more of a vintage thing than it is a modern thing, but another watch that does not have a domed crystal is this Squale Montauk 300 I'm wearing. This is also a flat sapphire crystal. So it also has the same texture dial. So they're kind of similar in that way. That's why I wore it today. Just to kind of show you another watch that is using similar design choices, a textured sandy dial and a flat sapphire crystal. So you don't have to have a domed sapphire crystal. Does it sometimes bring the watch upscale a little bit? Maybe. It could make it feel like a better value for what you're paying, but it's purely a preference thing in my book. So I really could not care less about it. I think it looks totally fine on this, especially this is a tool watch, right? this is supposed to be an everyday wear, a rugged watch, and the flat sapphire crystal is totally fine and probably preferred for that application. Moving on to number 5. These aren't all going to be completely positive things, but again, the watch is extremely comfortable to wear. The bracelet and everything is super comfortable. I had no issues with sharp edges or things poking me or anything like that. I saw some comments in my last video saying that, so I wanted to bring it up and address it. I personally, with this curved link bracelet, have had like 0 issues with sharp edges. The only place I possibly could see it would be on the quick release pins here for the end links. I would sometimes notice those, but only when I was really like looking for something to complain about. Otherwise, there are no, this doesn't pull any arm hairs, and it's not sharp or uncomfortable in any way. In fact, it's probably one of the most comfortable dive watch bracelets that I own. Number 6 is a design decision, but I wanted to bring it up. It's just a thought that I had while wearing the watch, and that is the crown. So using the NH35 is really like buttery smooth and nothing to really even talk about there. It's just a really robust workhorse movement and an excellent choice. So I only really had to touch the crown the first time I set the time, and I really haven't touched it since then. But from an aesthetic standpoint, I just thought it'd be kind of cool maybe to see the coin edge bezel, which I really like, kind of roll over to the crown. I don't want to remove functionality from the knurling on the crown because it is really easy to use. But because you're not really interacting with it all that often if you're wearing it every day, it would be really cool to see kind of this design aesthetic of the coin edge bezel kind of carry over to the crown. Because right now, I don't know, I just think that would be, it's one of my favorite parts about the watch is that coin edge bezel. And someone else brought it up in a comment, and I kind of agree. It would be cool to see that transfer over. Number 7 is the dial being a little bit plain, right? So we talked about that a lot in my last video. Living with the watch for 6 days, it has not been an issue. I really don't look at the watch and think to myself, wow, it's a really plain dial. What I think when I look at the watch is like, wow, that's a really legible watch. It's really easy to read. The contrast is excellent. Again, on the subject of the dial being a little bit plain, there are a couple comments I saw that could maybe help with that in the next iteration of this watch. So the indexes at 1, 2, 4, 5, etc. You could maybe enlarge those a bit or bring them further into the watch to kind of clear up some of that real estate space that we've got here. The only issue I see with that is the placement of the date window here. It doesn't really give anywhere for the Lume at 6 to go. But if you were to enlarge the Lume indexes somehow, that would definitely eat up some real estate space. The one thing I thought of that would be really easy to do would just be to apply a logo at the 12 and then apply raised text for Origin and 20 ATM there. It's a cost thing and just kind of a preference thing, but it could add a little bit of an element to give dimension to the dial to have an applied logo there. I don't mind the way this watch looks at all. Again, I think it looks awesome wearing and living with the watch for last week. I'm really happy with the way the dial looks, but on the subject of it being a little bit open and plain, those are some things that might improve it. Moving on to number 8. Again, the dial is a little shimmery, right? So I mentioned it was almost more like a silver. Erebus has obviously heard people say that, and their website has now changed to say white/silver for the dial choice here. So if you go to Erebus's website right now, it will say white/silver. It didn't say that before, to my knowledge, that I remember, but it does now. So clearly, other people have mentioned that as well. On that subject too, I did ask my wife what she thought of the watch. I want to get her opinion on it, kind of out of the Mad Watch Collector's book, see what the wife thinks. And the first thing that my wife said was that she said, "I like it. It looks sparkly." Yeah. So read into that however you want. But she said, "I like it. It looks sparkly." Yeah. I don't know. So it's a tool watch, right? It's supposed to be super rugged, right? So do you want to hear sparkly? I don't know. I don't mind it at all, living with the watch, but that's what she said. Maybe it would be cool to see an actually white matte dial. I like the watch that I got. I'm happy with it. I'm fine with it. Moving on to number 9 is the bracelet. So the bracelet is, I didn't really talk about this, but there is a slight taper to the bracelet. It does go from 20 at the lugs down to almost 18, a little bit under 18 down here at the clasp. you really almost can't tell, and it looks almost like there is no taper at all. And the reason I think that is, and I definitely noticed it all week, is like, what is going on here? Why do I keep thinking that the bracelet is like too narrow? I think it's just because he went with 20 millimeters. This watch, in its overall aesthetic and design, I really think could have used a 21 millimeter lug width, or even 22 potentially. And I understand the versatility of 20 is really popular and everyone wants it because you can swap the straps and use different bracelets or whatever. But I think when you're designing the watch with these lugs and just the overall look, 21 might look a little bit better. And then obviously it would add to that taper effect. And maybe I can make that a little bit more clear here. So yeah, it doesn't really look like there's a taper at all, but 21 millimeter lug width might help with that. And the last thing is the clasp. I have a couple thoughts on the clasp now. So first thing is, I gave it to a friend at the bar the other night, and she said, oh, it's like an Omega clasp. So high praise. You know, she's not a watch person. She doesn't really know what she's talking about, but her first thought was, oh, it's like a Seamaster. So that's really nice. I mean, the fact that she felt that this watch was in that same category is a nice thing to hear. Living with the watch itself, I found myself adjusting it quite often because you have the ability to do so, and it is a bit frustrating having to take the watch off to do that. My Citizen ProMaster, you can adjust kind of on the fly without taking the watch off, and it's a little bit nicer to live with that way. If you look at the ProMaster Clasp 2, it's a lot smaller than this clasp, and obviously Citizen has like patents and trademarks and stuff, right? So there's not a whole lot that we can do to build what Citizen has potentially. Maybe they had to design this clasp this way, but you can adjust the Citizen clasp on the go without taking the watch off. And I find that really convenient. And also the watch clasp itself is just thinner and a little bit shorter overall. And that was one thing that came up a lot in my thoughts last week, was just how big and what a presence that this clasp actually has. It's a very long clasp, and it's a very thick clasp. I mean, this is a 7.5 millimeter thick clasp, and this is like a 12.5 millimeter thick watch. But I said a lot of positive things about the clasp in my last video, and I'm going to stand by that. I really do think that the clasp is super premium and really nice for the price point we're at. But it does have presence, right? So I'll throw it on real quick just to show you one last time how the watch wears on me. One thing I did think of throughout the week is it would be nice maybe to have an option for a clasp that does not have quick adjust. Quick adjust is nice, but if having no quick adjust meant I could have a slimmer, like smaller clasp, I would like that option. It's not something that I understand they're able to do because manufacturing would call for like you to order so many of the minimum order quantity or whatever. But maybe charging extra for the micro adjust clasp would allow you to have different clasp options. Just something to think about. It's just something that came across in my making of this list and my wearing the watch for last week. I'm not 100% sure that I'm in love with the size or the presence of this clasp. But overall, I'm really, really happy with the watch. I'm really happy with the purchase. Really happy with how the video performed last week. So I cannot thank you again all for watching and subscribing and tuning in about this watch. This is not going to be a regular thing where I just upload Erebus videos every week. But I wanted to follow up and give you an idea of what it was like living with the Erebus Origin for the last week. So hopefully this helps. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.